Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of chapter 10. Please write all this down. This would be for the mid-December test. I keep calling it the Christmas test, but it's really in the middle of December, and then we're done. So we're only about a month away from finishing this entire semester. All right, let's begin with chapter 10, and we'll do this for a few minutes, and then we'll do our review. Don't anybody leave early today. All right, I'm not going to go over this much except to say that the top two dots, this whole chapter is on wide area. What is wide area? Going the distance. So remember in chapter 1, 2, and 3, we had to learn LAN, WAN, MAN, internetwork. Well, wide area is going the distance. Main difference between internetwork and a wide area is the distance they travel. When I'm going from here to South Jersey, here to California, here to Texas, that's a wide area network. Whole chapter on how to go a long distance. Let's begin. And by the way, since this is so important, and I'm only going to do a half hour on this today, you'll probably hear this lecture 3 times. All right, we're about to do a review in a few minutes. We're going to need to know our 7 layers. See the left-hand side? But all we're saying here is we're only using the bottom 2 layers for wide area networking. Now, again, when I do the review, we're going to do every one of these. And for my test on Monday, you've got to know what every one of these layers is, what every one of these layers does. Okay? All we're saying here is, and here's the next slide, LANs operate at the data link and physical layers, the 2 bottom layers, and that's all they do. All right? Now, the next part you've heard before, but it's extremely important. This next few slides will absolutely be the guts of the December test, so pay attention. How do I go the distance? How do I go on something called a long distance link? Well, Jimenez, I got you. The obvious long distance link is, of course, a telephone line. So how do I put my computer or my digital signal on a long distance telephone link? And the answer is several ways. Well, one of the top ways is the modem. So let's go slowly. A modem is a device that allows a digital computer to go on an analog phone line. Sorry to interrupt. All right. Now, be sure to know several things. Be sure to know what digital analog is. So digital, highs and lows, ones and zeros, just 2 possible states. Analog, continuously variable. The actual voice wave of Frank Sinatra singing. The actual voice wave of Elvis singing, that's analog. The digital ones and zeros are represented, that's digital. Now again, when grandma called up grandpa on the telephone, they talk to each other with voice, that's this. When you send ones and zeros, that's this. Grandma, grandpa, this, ones and zeros, this. So, what's a modem? A device that allows a computer, which works with digital signals, to communicate over analog phone lines, over telephone lines that use voice. Know that from my Christmas test. Okay, but Professor, you might not have heard. You're an old geezer. I'm very young. Didn't you know that today, these days in Bergen County, we ain't got any more analog phone lines. We're in the year 2020. The phone lines today are already digitized. So I shouldn't need anything, should I? Well, that's when I use a CSU-DSU. When I'm putting a digital computer signal on an already digitized phone line, I would need a CSU-DSU. Now, the super geniuses say, well, why would you need anything? Why can't you do nothing? It's similar to a modem, except all the signals are digital. It converts one type of digital signal to a completely different type of digital signal. Okay? And so you're going to need, so if I'm going on an analog line with my computer, I need a modem. If I'm on a digital line with my computer, I need a CSU-DSU. All right, let's start with this one slowly. Here is my local area network. I have to go through a router to go from one LAN to the other. We learned that in chapter 4 or 5, right? Well, if the other LAN is over here, I go through the switch to make the LAN, into the router, and out the router to the other LAN. So if it's across the hall, all I need is a router. But in this case, the LAN I'm going to is not across the hall, it's across the nation. It's in California. Well, if I'm going to go from New York to California, I still got to go through a router. But now I got to go through a CSU, DSU, a digital line, another router, and another one over there. This stuff is just to make the distance. This stuff is to go from LAN to LAN. So to go from LAN to LAN, I need a router. If they're far away, then I need a CSU, DSU, and a digital phone line. See the difference? Peter Piper picked the pecker, pickle peppers. And you're seeing this for the second time, so hopefully it's starting to click. This is a very important chapter, not only because it's on my last test, but because this is where we start to take the course and pull it together. Meaning we had to learn a lot of individual stuff in chapter 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6. As we get past chapter 6, we're trying to build everything together to see how a network works. And this class I'm not unhappy with. You guys and girls seem to be pretty intelligent. So it seems like you're catching up with this. Let's keep going. Okay, this is my lengthy part of the lecture. I'm watching my watch because I have to give myself enough time. So I'm going to do this as slowly as I can, and then we may just stop after that because I have to give myself time for the review. And we may do this lecture one last time next time, depending upon how I feel, because I really got to get this home. And then the next lectures will be on the next few chapters. All right, so WAN connection methods. What does WAN mean again? Wide area. What does wide area mean? Going the distance, long distance. How do I go from here to California, here to South Jersey? Not here across the hall. That's a different lecture. Here far away. And again, circuit switching these lines. So here it begins. Hint, hint, a lot of this would be on my Christmas test. Circuit switching, a temporary dedicated connection. So when I call you up on the telephone, call you on the phone, and dial you, the relay is closed and you and I talk, and we have a temporary dedicated connection for the entire circuit. So it creates a temporary dedicated connection between you and me on the telephone. The telephone is circuit switched. The entire conversation takes place on the same circuit. Now, the one that's a little screwy is the second dot, where it talks about POTS. And POTS is simply an acronym, and it's a true acronym for plain old telephone service. Well, plain old telephone service is the one that grandma called grandpa for a date. That's the one that's analog. That's the one that's voice. So when grandma and grandpa were talking, they were on the plain old telephone service. It sounds crazy, but that's a true acronym. I'll be covering this stuff in a few minutes, not now. So here we go. Plain old telephone service is limited in bandwidth through the digital analog conversion by modems. Now let's remind ourselves 4 slides ago. I want to put my laptop on an analog phone line. I have to put it through a modem and it converts my digital signal to an analog signal and send it to you. But now you got a problem. You arrive, you get the signal coming into you. It's analog. You got to convert it back to digital so you can read it. Now you want to answer me. You got to convert digital to analog to send it to me. And when I receive it, I got to convert analog back to digital to read it. So I'm constantly converting up and down, up and down. That converting up and down by modems does what? Slows me down. It limits my speed to about 56,000 bits per second, which sounds pretty good to you, but it's very slow in real life. So one more time. Analog lines, plain old telephone circuit lines, are very slow because of the D to A and A to D conversions by modem that slows the signal down. Well, what do? We're stuck. Gee, Professor, didn't you get the memo? I'm much younger than you. I live in Bergen County. Didn't you find out that today we're on all digital lines? And again, I'm going to talk about this for a few minutes today, even though I'm watching my watch, okay? ISDN was the first digital telephone line. It was invented in the 1980s. That meant it was digital, and we could go faster. So it has two, the BRI and the PRI. So the BRI is 2 B channels. Now a B channel is a telephone channel. That means if I get this subscription, I get 2 telephones. Here's a telephone, and I have 2 of them for the monthly fee. Now, big cuidado. I could have 2 phones if I want to, but it might be more sense to have one telephone line for talking and the other one for a modem line for sending data. So generally speaking, the BRI with 2 B channels was 1 phone line and 1 modem line. Although it could be 2 modems or 2 phones. Now you say, I got a problem. I run a corporation. I got vice presidents, I got secretaries, I got department heads. What can you do for me? Well, the PRI is the 23 B channels. That means I can have 23 combinations of telephones and modems. So one can be this person's, one can be that person's. I could have 22 phones I'm sorry, I could have 11 phones or 12 phones and I could have 12 modems. Or I could have 15 phones and, 8 modems, whatever it is. The bottom line, I can have 23 B channels on the PRI. This is the early form of digital phone line. And it was a big deal because it was the first digital one. It's not that important. It's not used that much anymore, but you have to know it for their test particularly. Okay, I'm going to spend a long time on this one. Okay, so I got the story about the analog. I'm still watching my clock here. I got the story about the analog phone lines. Okay, I'm a little bit upset about that. And then you get the memo, Professor. We're all digital these days. Well, here it is, and this would be on my Christmas test. A T1 is the building block digital telephone line, and a T1 line is 1.5 million bits per second. The speed of a T1 line is 1.544 million bits per second. It is digital. That means highs and lows, no current, no voice wave. And a T3 is 44 million bits per second. Now let me do a pause on this. We've got a T4, a T5, a T6, a T7, a T9, a T10, a T11, a T40, a T50. You go way up. Do I have to know them all? For reasons I don't really understand, the only ones they seem to want you to know is that a T1 line is 1.5 million bits per second and a T3 is 44 million bits per second. And I'll tell you in a few minutes why the T1 line is so famous. That's what's known as the building block line. The entire nation is wired in T1 lines. And what's so special about them? They are digital. And look at the next slide. We'll use a CSU DSU. Well, why? Because whenever we go on a digital line, we need a CSU DSU. Is the T1 line digital? Yes, it is. So we connect with the TSU DSU. Okay, now, what is multiplexing? Well, multiplexing putting several conversations. Now, I'll just go through it quickly. In the old time movies, ring, 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 operator, I want to call Chicago. Okay, hang up, we'll call you back in an hour. Why I gotta wait an hour? Well, the line to Chicago is busy right now, but in an hour it'll be free. Ring, 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 operator, I want to call Los Angeles. I'll call you back in 2 hours. Why 2 hours? The line to Los Angeles is busy right now. There's people ahead of you. In about 2 hours, you'll be the next one in line. Well, the phone company says we can't make any money that way. We want to put multiple conversations on the same line at the same time. That's multiplexing. So I got to put 10, 20, 30, 40 conversations on the line to Los Angeles at the same time. Now, it's really easy to do if they're all going to listen into each other. So you're talking to your grandmother, you're talking to your girlfriend, and we're all eavesdropping. That's easy to do. But I don't want that. I want privacy. Can I put private conversations where we're all kept private? We can, but it's difficult. And here's the lecture. The way we do that is what's called time division multiplexing. Your conversations in time slot 1, your conversations in time slot 2, and your conversations in time slot 3. That means there's big interruptions. Well, if I was doing that mechanically, you'd hear gaps of silence between it when you were talking. But if I use a digital switch and go back and forth rapidamente, you won't even know there's an interruption. So you think you're having a conversation with privately, and you are. You don't know there's a lot of time gaps in there, but you're not hearing them because they're filled in so quickly. Time division multiplexing allocates a different time slot for each conversation. So I get multiple conversation streams on the wire at the same time. How do I do it? By putting each person in a different time slot. By the way, that revolutionized the whole telephone system. So when you call Chicago now, I'm still watching my watch, the line's always busy. You say, okay, it's busy. Okay, all I need is one time slot. Chicago will be fine. You call Los Angeles, 1 million people are talking there every time. All I need for time slot 51, fit me in there, I can get through. So it makes a big difference as to why you can make long distance calls without waiting. Know what multiplexing is, know what time division multiplexing is, know that a T1 line is 1.5 million bits per second, know that a T3 is 44, et cetera, and know why are we using a CSU DSU? Because we're on a digital telephone line. I'm still watching my watch. I'm going to skip this one today because I want to get to this. Okay, here it is. Here's why I'm going to go to this, and in about 5 or 10 minutes, we got to stop. Packet switching does not make a dedicated connection. Circuit switching does. Well, who cares if packet switching doesn't? Here it is, everybody. Give me a drum roll. The telephone is circuit switch. The internet is packet switch. The telephone is circuit switch. The internet is packet switch. What is packet switching? Each packet's transmitted separately. This packet goes this way, this packet goes this way, this packet goes this way. Now, do they all get to you in California? Yes, they do. They get to you, but they all take a different route. When I'm talking to you, my voice wave takes the same route. When I'm sending data to you on the internet, each packet takes a different route. The internet, packet switch, each packet takes a different route. Top dot, it does not create a dedicated connection. Now, next slide. Watch carefully. What we create is a logical connection, not a dedicated connection. I still want to send it all to you in California. It's going to get to you. Just that each one's going to take a different path. No single cable exists between the two
Ah,
endpoints. It's a
bueno, yo me lo
logical
imaginé,
connection,
o sea, yo me lo
not
imaginé que era
a
más o menos así,
dedicated
pero
connection.
no pensé que era
One
tan
more
literal,
time.
o sea,
Telephone is circuit switch, internet is packet switch. Don't worry too much about SVCs and PVCs on the bottom. Just know that the internet and packet switching does a virtual circuit, whereas the telephone and circuit switching does an actual circuit. Okay, we're moving along slowly here. Now, I'm going to just go through these quickly and then we'll take our break to what we have to do. But we are going to have to know about packet switching, and there's four of them. And I'll go through them rather quickly and we'll do them at least one more time. Two or three of these would be on my December test. Okay. X25 is the old packet switching and has a lot of error checking. X25, the old packet switching with a lot of error checking. That's good, right? Very reliable. Excellent. What's the disadvantage? All that error checking takes time, so it's slow. X25, older form of packet switching, lots of error checking, very reliable, but all that error checking takes time, so it's slow. The standard packet switching we use today is frame relay. Now, what's so great about it? Frame relay does no error checking at all, none. Therefore, it's got a very low reliability. Well, you say, oh, that's terrible. Why would I want to use it? Because by not doing error checking, what do I get? Blindingly fast speed. So it's frame relay, no error checking, and super fast. No error checking and super fast. Frame relay has a CIR, committed information rate, which means frame relay, we charge by the speed. Slow speed, you pay less. High speed, you pay more. It's one of the few forms of packet switching that you can actually decide beforehand. I got a lot of money. Give me the highest speed I can. I don't have much money. Can you give me a deal? Yeah, we'll give you a low speed. Okay, I'll take it because I get a deal. So committed information rate is the guaranteed minimum rate. Only applies to frame relay. By the way, it talks about using a pair of CSU DSUs. That's got nothing to do with the fact that it's frame relay. That's got to do with the fact that it's digital to begin with. And when always going with digital, we always use CSU DSUs. See what I'm saying? Okay. I'll just do the last two and I think we'll stop. Oh, this slide you might want to look at for a minute because remember I said I wasn't sure why they wanted the T1 line, that you had to know it? And I said, yes, it is. Well, what they're trying to show you here is the entire nation's wired with T1 lines. Now, it's certainly not true that New York has only two and Boston has one. New York has probably several hundred of them. Boston has several hundred of them. But the entire nation is basically wired together with T1 lines. What's the speed of a T1 line? 1.54 million bits per second. And what's so special about it? It's digital. All right, I'll do these two and then we'll stop, I think. ATM is not how you get your credit card or how you get money out of the bank. ATM is another form of packet switching. And on a test, the main thing of this is high speed. If I want super high speed packet switching, it's ATM. Now, it does use these fixed lane cells. That's true. And I call them mini packets or mini cells. But breaking it into those mini cells gives you the speed. And what you're after is the speed. Okay. Another form of packet switching. And finally, multi-protocol label switching. That's the one I think I told you last time, but I'll do it quickly. Instead of every packet has a to and from address. I cover the to and from address so that when you're going through the country, you don't have to read it. Well, if you don't read the to and from address, how are you going to forward it? It just says, keep going west, or keep going north, or keep going in this direction. It makes packet forwarding decisions faster. Now, when I get to the destination, I have to take the label off and read it, but it makes packet forwarding decisions faster and makes it faster. All right, let me go back and stop. Here we go. Packet switching, internet, packet switching. Know what X25 is, know what frame relay is, know what ATM is, know what MPLS is, and they're all form of packet switching. Now, I'm just looking at my watch. One more time, this stuff would all be on the mid-December Christmas test, okay? And I have a lot more to do, but I think I'm just getting tired. So nobody's leaving early. It's coming up on 3:45. What I'm going to do is stop sharing this. Check one more time my attendance to see if anybody came in that I didn't get. Now I have that person. I have that person. I think there's nobody I didn't. Oh, yes, one person. And then as soon as I put this person in who I didn't get, two people, we're going to go to chapter 7 first, 15 minutes, then chapter 8, and then chapter 9. Okay. And don't miss next time. I see people showed up today. I haven't been here for a while. We're having a test on Monday. We're reviewing for it right now. If you didn't show up, but you're here today, you made a brilliant decision. All right. I think I have everybody. I have. All right, let's go. I'm going to minimize this. This is tedious because I have to do. Okay, so we said we're doing chapter 7, 8, 9. And I'm starting with chapter 7. I have to do two things. I have to get my little piece of paper out so I don't make a mistake. But I think I know where I'm going. Let's start with where I'm going. Never mind all that. All right, let's begin here. We do need to know the order of the thing. So we do need to know application, presentation, session. Remember my acronym? All people seem to need data processing. And not only do you need that, but you need to know that the presentation layer is 6. The session layer is 5. You need to know the order and the numbers. The order and the numbers. Okay? That you would need to know. I dropped my pen, but screw it. All right, now we're going to spend 15 minutes on chapter 7 alone. And what I'm going to end up doing is going through them one at a time and knowing what each one is by what they do and their numbers. And it'll be about 4 to 5 to 6 questions on the test about what does this layer do, or what happens at this layer, or this aspect takes place at which of these layers, and this thing takes place at which of these layers. Now, I'm skipping all this gibberish. Okay. The application layer just talks to the application. The application layer, layer 7, interfaces. Know it as application layer 7, it interfaces with the application. Now, this one. Again, a lot of these. The presentation layer is layer 6. Know it by name and number. And the key there is this term data formatted. Well, how do you remember that? How does the data look? How does it present itself? How do you look? How do you present yourself? So presentation is how do you appear when you show up for a date. So what do? You groom yourself, you comb your hair, you brush your teeth. So how does the data appear? How is it formatted? How does it look? That's taken care of as a presentation layer, which is also layer number 6. Know it as presentation layer, know it as layer 6, and know that data formatting takes place there. Okay, the session layer is layer 5. Know the session layer, layer 5. What does it do? It manages the session. So I want to talk to you. It initiates a session. That's the session layer. I'm sick of talking to you. I want to hang up. It terminates the session. Session layer, layer 5. I want to keep talking to you. Could you go a little slower? Could you go a little faster? session layer, layer 5. Okay? Manages the session, initiates the session, and terminates the session. Again, know the name and the number. Okay, transport layer, layer 4. Oh, by the way, I should be giving you page numbers on these. These are all page 300, 300, and all in the 300, 302 page, in that range. Okay. Session layer was 300, transport layer 300. Okay. Okay, here we go. Transport layer, layer 4. That's the one about the connection oriented. That's the one that decides. That's the one that decides if it's connection oriented, the SYN-ACK Act, and all that kind of stuff. That's the one that TCP operates at. Okay. That's layer 4. Now, here's a biggie one coming up. This to me is one of the more important layers. Layer 3 is called the network layer. That's the layer the internet operates at. It's also the layer the routers operate at. That means that's the layer that picks the best path selection. So how do I choose what path the packet's going to take? By a router at the network layer, layer 3. See what I mean? Where does the internet operate on? Using a router at the network layer, layer 3. Where would I find an IP address? In a router at the network layer, layer 3. See what I'm saying? So network layer 3 is the layer that picks the best path. It's the layer the internet operates on, and it's the layer routers operate on. Network layer, and it's called layer number 3. Know that. Okay, data link layer, layer number 2, that's the one switches. That's the one that has the MAC address. So data link layer, layer number 2, switches operate at that layer, and the MAC address is at that layer. Okay, switches, MAC address, data link layer, layer 2. By the way, again, then know the name and the number both. You may think I'm nitpicking by forcing you to learn this stuff, but if everything I've taught you, if you forget everything else in the class from beginning to end, try to remember this chapter. That would be the most valuable thing you learn. Sounds crazy, but in a job interview, they could actually refer to this. And when you read articles, they'll refer to this. So if you want to forget everything I taught you, try to remember this chapter. Everything you do from now on in other accessible classes, advanced classes, will depend on this chapter. All right, finally, we're not finished yet, but we're getting to finish this chapter only. And the next one is physical layer, layer 1. That's the one that converts the signal to the actual physical thing. So remember I said, if you can touch it, measure it, feel it, or cut yourself on it, it's physical. Now, big cuidado, everybody, that leads to this one. This term encoding. Well, encoding is putting it into logic ones and zeros I can measure. So if it's plus 5 volts and ground, I'm encoding it. If it's light on, light off, I'm encoding it. If I can see it, feel it, touch it, measure it, that's encoding. What layer does encoding take place at? The physical layer, layer 1. Where do I encode the signal? At the physical layer, layer 1. Know that word. Basically know all the layers. Okay. I'm not going to summarize here. Okay, one thing for this page is very important. This is on page 307. Know the difference between 802.3 and 802.11. So let's go over this because they're on the test. 802.3 anything is Ethernet. Again, this is page 307. 802.3 anything is some form of Ethernet. But 802.11 is what? That's some form of Wi-Fi or wireless. So 802.11, some form of Wi-Fi or wireless. 802.3, some form of Ethernet. By the way, you may think I'm nitpicking with that also, but here's a chart of all the 803s, 802s. And you'll notice the only bold ones are 802.3 Ethernet and 802.11 wireless. So even what they're saying is, here's all the list. Do I have to know all these? No, you don't. You have to know this one, and you have to know this one. See what I mean? So again, 802.3 anything is Ethernet. 802.11 anything is Wi-Fi. That would all be on page 307. And the last thing, not for my review, but for this chapter only, is this. be sure to know that the data link layer was broken up into these two. That's called the 802 modification to the OSI layer. So we left all these alone. We have to know these and they work the same. It's the data link layer we broke up into these two. The logical link control and media access. Now, I'm not so concerned you know what each one is. But remember, we said the MAC address is a data link layer. I said, not really. The MAC address is at the MAC sublayer of the data link layer. That's the one you break up. By the way, knowing this is important too. Again, not only on my test, but on theirs. Again, if you forget everything I've taught you, try to remember this chapter. It will actually be the best thing you could do for this course. Okay, we can all go home. Well, not really. We're 1/3 of the way through our review. So let me just say one more time. Know every single mother sticking layer and what each layer does and know the layer number. Okay? All right, so I'm now going to stop sharing this. And I'm not going to check attendance again. I think I got everybody. I'm going to now go minimize this. I'm sorry about having to do this each time, but there's not much I can do. Over here, this is the worst one, so I always have to open a new one, see. We're going to be doing chapter 8. And I do have page numbers. I'll try to call them out. All right, now, what do oh, okay, okay. So now, none of this made it. Okay, no, none of this made it. Okay, this might be important. I think this would be on page, I don't know what page this is on. Damn, I don't know. But I'm going to just say it. Switching tables contain MAC addresses. Now, let's get this right. Switching tables have MAC addresses. Routing tables have IP addresses. Why? Switches work at the data link layer using frames and MAC addresses. So switching tables contain MAC addresses. Routing tables contain IP addresses. I would know that. I have a page I just can't find. This is all in chapter though 8. Now, all 3 of these are on my test. All 3 of them. You have to know all of them. This is page 323. Let's begin with the middle dot. Frame forwarding methods. What's store and forward switching? The switch reads the entire frame into its buffers before forwarding. It reads all the frame, make sure it contains no errors. So I read the entire frame forwarded, read the next frame forwarded. What's the result? Completely error-free. I never forward any errors. But what's the downside? By having to read the entire frame each time, it slows me down. Extremely reliable, extremely error-free, and extremely slow. Okay? Next one, and all 3 of these are on my test. How do I solve that with cut-through switching? I read only enough of the incoming frame to determine the source and destination and forward it. I don't read the rest of the frame. What's the disadvantage? I don't check for errors at all. What's the other disadvantage? I forward all the errors. I forward all the frames, sloppy, incomplete, fragmented, everything. And that's a big disadvantage. What's the advantage? It's very fast because I'm not error checking. So I get blindingly fast speed, but forward a lot of errors. With this one, I forward no errors, but it's slow. Okay. Now, and all 3 are on my test, so be careful. Fragment free. But this one is a combination. I read enough of the frame to guarantee at least the minimum size. So I look at the to and from address. I say, don't forward it yet. Go a little further, go a little further. Now that I see it's a minimum size, now you can forward it. That makes sure it's not a fragment, but it doesn't get rid of all the errors. So, same topic, but here it is. Cut through is the fastest. I forward all the errors, and that gives me the extra speed. Store and forward is the slowest. Because I'm checking for errors, I have to slow down. And fragment free is somewhere in the middle. Okay? One more time. All of these are on page 323. Let me get that right. Right. 323 and 324, and all 3 of them are on my test. Know them. Okay? And again, on 322 is what I talked about. Know that switching tables have MAC addresses and routing tables have IP addresses. And that's on 322. And again, all three of these is 323 and 324, and know all three of them for my test. All right, let's keep going. We're making good progress because I have about 5 or 7 minutes more on this one, and then another 10, 12, 15 minutes on the other one. So we should be out of here by 4:15 or so, and have covered everything. Please know all three of these for my test. Okay. Let's talk about this guy. This is on page 325. We're talking about a switch now, not a router, a switch. And we're talking about having a switching loop. And we're talking about a switching loop being a bad thing. What's a switching loop? When the dog is chasing his tail and the frame is lost and keeps going around an endless circle. Okay? Well, there's two ways to do it. I can have a guy mechanically separate the loop, or I can use something called STP. What is STP? It's a piece of software, a program that runs on a switch. What is the only thing it does? It detects and breaks switching loops. When a loop is detected, one of the switch ports goes into blocking mode, preventing it from forwarding frames. Once I break the configuration, then I resume forwarding. Automatically done by STP. So what is STP? A program or piece of software running on a switch that prevents switching loops. They also call them broadcast storms. So it prevents switching loops and broadcast storms. Now, it doesn't really prevent them. When it detects them, it interrupts them. But it's a solution to switching loops and broadcast storms. STP. Page 325. Know that from my test. Unfortunately, we have a little bit more in this chapter to go. Isn't that easy before we get to the last chapter? But we should be out of here by 4:15 or so. Oh, that made it to the test. Okay, this part made it. It's tough. So the first one is we know that routers operate at layer 3 and that routers all contain IP addresses. What did I say? Switching tables contain MAC addresses, routing tables contain IP addresses. All right, so here we go. The hardest part, I'm not going to do the whole lecture, I'm just doing a review. The hardest part of this, and it is on the test, is this entire thing about routing tables and routing protocols and distance vector and link state. So remember how I said it. A router can detect the stuff it's attached to. But the only way this router would know about these two is this router tells it. And the only way this router would find out about this is this router's got to communicate. So I can detect the ones I'm connected to, but I find out about remote ones because other routers talk to me. Well, how do other routers talk to me? Using routing protocols. And these are the two. So let's begin. Distance vector is the old routing protocol, the one that sends the entire routing table and is very slow, 337. Link state is the newer routing protocol that only sends the changes and it's very fast. Distance vector, the old routing protocol sends the entire routing table every time and it's very slow. Link state only sends the changes and it's much faster. Now, page 339. What is convergence and how does this all work? So what is convergence? Convergence is when every router is completely up to date. You say, well, what's up to date in a router? When every router knows everything correctly about every other router. How do I get that way? By either distance vector or link state. So distance vector sends the entire routing table. It uses more traffic and it converges slower. It takes more time for all the routers to get the correct information. Because link state only sends the changes, it uses less more traffic, and the speed of convergence is faster. The routers get the correct information at a faster rate, and they converge faster. What is convergence? When all the routing tables have all the correct information from all the other routing tables. Know what convergence is on page 339, and know what link state and distance vector is on 337 and 338. And what are we referring to? Routers and routing tables. Okay, good news. We're getting there. None of this made it. Skip all this crap. One thing that made it, I'm a little unhappy. I'm going to do it twice, once in this chapter, once in the other chapter, and that is this stuff here about Wi-Fi wireless. This would be on 345. When I'm encrypting the wireless signal, try to remember that WEP is the old one, the crummy one, the weak one that's been hacked into. And the WPA2 is the good one, the strong one, the one you should use. So what kind of wireless encryption is the best one to use, the only one to use? WPA2. Which one should you avoid like the plague? WEP. Why? It's already been hacked into or violated. Okay, so here's the good news and the bad news. We're not done with our review, but I think we're finally done with chapter 8. All right? So one more, and then we can all go home. I'm reminding you that Monday's the test. You have from noon on Monday to noon on Tuesday to take it. It's already up and posted. All right, so. And we'll be out of here, as I said, by 4:15 or so. I don't think anybody new came in. I got everybody. Good. All right. So sorry about this. I got to minimize this. I got to erase this. I got to go down here. And what are we up to now? I think chapter 9, right? 7, 8, 9. All right. Good. Okay, good. We're almost there, people. Hang on to your shorts. I say we're almost there and something else. When we take this test, we're 3/4 of the way through the semester. So I know you had a wonderful time this semester, but one more test after that, and we're done. Hard to believe we got through this semester. Okay. No, none of this made it to the test. I'm skipping. None. Okay. We're starting here. Don't confuse, and this would be on page 374. Don't confuse the term authentication and authorization. They both start with A, they mean something different. Authentication is your name and your password. Are you the real person you claim to be, or are you imposter? Authentication. Are you the actual Joe Smith or a fake Joe Smith imitating him? That's authentication. How is that different than authorization? Once you get on as Joe Smith, what are you allowed to do? The files and folders you can see, the resources you're authorized to use, that's authorization. So authorization is what can you do once you are logged on. Authentication is name and password. Are you who you say you are? Page 374. Know that. This lecture on MS Chap was interesting, but it didn't make it to the test, so I'm not going to go over it. Okay, now the bad news is, this. There is some junk or a lot of stuff on the whole thing about passwords and why they're so important and why they're so good. Don't worry about the Windows allowing 128 characters. That's not important. What about the minimum password length? Well, first of all, the minimum password length on Windows is 0. So what would happen if I had a password length of 0? Well, that would mean I could use a blank password, right? So Windows allows that. All that stuff is on page 376. But that's not a good idea. So you should probably have a minimum of 5 to 8 characters. Now, one more time, does Windows require 5 to 8 characters? It does not. It requires 0 characters. But you could set your network to require 5 to 8, and within reason, remember what I said, the longer the password, the more secure you are. Understand that if there's 0, it means you can have a blank password, and understand that the bigger the minimum, the more likely you are to be secure. Okay? I'm just going to go quickly over this stuff too. This is one of my favorite ones. Do use uppercase, lowercase numbers and special characters. Do combine them. Don't use common dictionary words. Do use a lot of different things. Don't use dictionary words. What they're saying is something like this is a good one. Why? It does use uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. And it also does not use real dictionary words because the word networking is purposely misspelled and the word cool is purposely misspelled. So it doesn't use dictionary words. Understand what a good and bad password is. Okay, we'll just do quickly IPsec and the pre-shared packet, pre-shared key. IPsec is when if I want to encrypt it on the hard drive, it's not this. If I'm sending you stuff across the internet, anybody could capture and read the packet. I want to encrypt the packet that I'm sending over the internet, and that's IPsec. Well, I want you to be able to read it, and I can read what you send to me, but nobody else can. How can we make sure that other people can't read it? Pre-shared key. It's a series of letters, numbers, and special characters that the two devices use to authenticate each other's identity. The administrator enters the same key on both devices. So if you over there and me over here have the same pre-shared key, when I send to you and you send to me, we can read each other. But if Grandpa over there does not have the same pre-shared key as me, then when he gets my data, if he captures it, he can't read it. IPsec, sending data over the internet and securing it. How do I do it? With a pre-shared key that both of us have that nobody else has. Page 381. We don't have much more to do. We only have a few more. I'm getting tired, actually. No, never mind. The VPN and tunneling didn't make it. Again, no. For the second time, though, this did make it. And I'm just doing the second time. See the order here? Wireless wireless networking, and we want to encrypt it so somebody can't capture my bank account number. It's in the reverse order here. WEP is the old one, the crummy one, the one that's been hacked into. This is better than WEP, but it's not that great. WPA2, that's the strongest wireless encryption. Now again, shameless plug, if you take my security class next semester or a wireless class, you'll have to know exactly why that's true. Here we're just saying WEP is the old one, the crummy one, the weak one. WPA2 is the good one, the strong one. That's the one you want to use. And we're seeing it twice, once in the other chapter and once here. And it's still important. Okay. A firewall is nothing more than a packet filter. So a firewall says packets from you are okay, packets from you are not okay. Okay. And by the way, it's not from you by name, it's from you by IP address. So packets from your IP address, I'm not letting through. Packets from yours, I am. And that's all a firewall is. The cuidado here is this thing down here on page 388. What is stateful packet inspection? Well, one more time. I ask you a question. The firewall sees me do it. You answer my question. The firewall lets you through. So the firewall says you're okay because I saw Professor C ask you a question and I see you're answering it. A little bit later, you try to send me another comment and the firewall says, I'm not letting you through. You're a crook. You say, wait a minute. How come an hour or two ago you let me through and now you won't? Well, because an hour or two ago you were part of an ongoing conversation. I saw him ask you something and I know you were replying to him, so I let you through. This time you're trying to initiate a conversation, so I'm not going to let you through. It depends on the packet's context. If it's part of an ongoing conversation, it'll come through, and if it's not, it won't. Now, that's stateful packet inspection. Is this good or bad? It's an attempt to make the firewall intelligent. Well, the firewall is going to think, well, does it really work? Yes and no. The fact that he's trying to initiate a conversation with me doesn't automatically make him a crook. He might be trying to correct the answer he gave me. But the firewall is going to say no if you're using stateful. If you're using stateless packet inspection, you're always okay and you're never okay. For instance, stateless, anything from you will always get through. But stateless, anything from you will never get through. In stateful, sometimes you're okay and sometimes you're not. When? If you're part of an ongoing conversation. The context. Page 388. Understand how that works and what that does. Yep, I'm watching my watch. We're getting there. I'm leaving out what's not on the test because I'm tired. Okay, malware is any kind of malicious software. It's any kind of stuff. Now, all this stuff I lectured on, a file infector, boot sector, polymorphic, you don't need this for my test. If you ever take my security class, you would have to know what each of those viruses was and how they work. But in this one, they just want to know that you know what a virus is. Okay? A virus is some kind of malware that does something bad. Now, I know, a virus must infect a file. A worm can spread by itself. So a virus can only spread by infecting a file. But look what it says. A worm does not require another file to spread. A virus does require another file to spread. A virus can only spread if it's part of another file. A worm can spread whether or not it's part of another file. Now, I'm going to talk to on this slide. We only have 2 or 3 more items, but this says, I want to know the top 2. So what's a Trojan horse? That is some kind of malicious software that appears to be an existing screensaver, appears to be a video game, appears to be a calculator, but actually is doing something bad in the background. It appears to be something useful, but in reality contains some type of malware. That would be a Trojan or a Trojan horse. Know that. Also, on the same page, 395, what's a rootkit? Well, a rootkit is a form of malicious software. This is the one that's the most dangerous, and here's why. It can monitor traffic and monitor keystrokes and capture password, but it doesn't tell you it did it. So this is the most difficult one to detect and the most difficult one to remove. Let me do that again. The rootkit is a form of malware that hides itself. A rootkit's the most difficult one to detect and the most difficult one to remove. And it's considered to be the most dangerous, period. On whatever I just said, 395, know what a Trojan horse is and know what a rootkit is. We're getting there. I'm almost there. Okay. Now, this is what I want. Where the hell is it? Where is it? I got to find it because if I leave it out, you'll be screwed. I think I went by it already. All right, here we go. Know that IDS is intrusion detection. I'm detecting an intrusion. And IPS is intrusion prevention. I'm preventing it by taking action. One more time. IDS, I'm just detecting an intrusion. That's it. IPS, I detect the intrusion and I take countermeasures. Now, the one you might want to know, though, also with all this stuff is this. The bottom of this thing, and it's on page 390. What's a honeypot? Page 390. Well, a honeypot is a fake server. Well, why would I put a fake server on? It's a fake server that is a decoy to lure the potential attackers. Look, I've got server 23. It's very important. I know they're going to attack server 23. It's got my valuable data on it. So what I do is I put a fake server 23. And the fake server 23 has also a lot of data on it. But it's all got artificial useless data on it. The idea is I'm trying to get them to attack the fake server and not the real one. What's a honeypot? It's a device that's installed as a decoy to lure potential attackers to attack it so that it will attack the fake one and not the real one. Page 390. Page 390. IDS detects an intrusion, IPS prevents an intrusion. And a honeypot is a device installed as a decoy to lure the attackers. All right, I'm exhausted. I'm sure you are too. I believe I am done. So let me just check one last time. Yeah, nobody here I don't have. One last time then. Next Monday, you have from Monday noon to Tuesday noon to take a test on Moodle on chapter 9 and 10 and 11. Be sure to take it. And next week and the week after, we're going to basically finish the course. Okay? So whoever wants to go home can. Anybody has a question, they can. And remember, Monday, you're taking a test. I'm staying for anybody who has a question.